Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, and today I get to be joined by Alex and Amanda of Ashenheart, who recently put out Faded Gold off of Syrup Moose Records. Amanda, Alex, how are we doing this afternoon?
Excellent. Glad to be here.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, really great. Thanks. Thank you for having us both.
Well, I'm curious for the two of you, what originally got you two into the genre of black metal? What are like the origin stories for you two?
Well, for me, it was seeing a CD copy of In the Night Side Eclipse at a
Of
used
course.
CD store. And I'm like, wow, that is a cool album cover. I'm going to buy this. And my response to it at first was, what the hell is this? Because at that time I was mainly listening to stuff like Iron Maiden and Megadeth.
Sure.
But there was something just mesmerizing about it too that kind of stuck in my brain, and I kept returning to it over and over again. And I think that, eventually I started trying to learn the songs, and I think that's where everything, coalesced.
You walked out just like you had no idea what it was and you picked it and it just happened to be a classic that you picked up at a used CD store.
Yeah, well, it was like $5, so
Yeah.
I couldn't say no to that, and I liked the album cover, and I'd heard of Emperor, but I'd never actually heard them. Just
Mhm.
mentioned in passing on back when forums were a thing,
Yeah.
to show how old I am. And yeah, that, after that, I got into stuff like Dark Throne and Immortal and uh, the early. I never really got into the earlier Mayhem stuff as much as the Emperor and Dark Throne and whatnot.
Hmm.
I don't know why, but yeah, that kind of set it off, and it's been my favorite genre ever since.
What about you, Alex?
I think for me, it was just sort of a natural progression, really, from the sort of. So when I first started getting into metal, the band that got me into it, my gateway band was System of a Down. Yeah, as it was for a lot of people, I
Yeah.
think my sort of age, and it just sort of progressed from there. Really, you then sort of start going back and looking at the roots of the genre. So that led me on to stuff like Iron Maiden, Metallica, then back through to Motorhead, and then sort of you start branching out from that point. So obviously, with Motorhead, you've then sort of got that bit of a crossover with Venom and the sort of the speed metal thing, which then progressed on to obviously sort of getting into your second wave stuff. So Dark Throne has always been the big one for me. I'd say they were my first proper like black metal band.
Mhm.
Yeah, Blazing the Northern Sky. I'd sort of I picked up a copy of that and never really looked back.
I'm so glad you mentioned System of a Down because I think Toxicity is such a vital record that I think maybe was overlooked, at least by like metal elitist at the time, as like, it was roped in with the rest of kind of the trash that was involved with new metal, but it's clearly a step above all of those records.
Oh yeah,
It
100%.
definitely was. I remember it getting a lot of, online hate in the 2000s.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean I actually came into metal quite late. I was in sort of my last year of secondary school, which would be sort of 15, 16 years old at the time.
Hmm.
And a friend of mine just gave me a CDR copy of, I think it was Hypnotize, the first one that I listened to, and sort of just,
Yeah.
I'd not really listened to metal at all at that point. And just hearing that for the first time, like the way Serge and Darren's voices played off against each other and stuff like that, it just blew my mind. I was like, what the
Yeah.
hell is this? Because yeah, at the time, the only things I'd really listened to that were sort of guitar-based music were like your Green Days, Nirvanas, that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
That System of a Down record really just opened up a whole new world of music to me.
Yeah, going from Boulevard of Broken Dreams to Chop Suey is a huge jump.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Now from what I understand, some of these songs on Faded Gold are quite old, like some of them dating back to even like 2011,
Hmm.
how did you hold on to songs this long and how eventually did it become into a record?
Well, the I originally started recording in GarageBand, um, and I have those files, and most of them are riffs or partial song ideas that I was able to, relearn. And I also have a bunch of Reaper files from, gosh, maybe 8 years ago that still miraculously still opened in the newest version. So I was able to work off of that. But,
Mm.
it was the biggest challenge was taking all this stuff that I'd written over the years when I was in various bands and listening to various genres and kind of put it together into a cohesive whole. And a lot of that was writing, stuff to bridge these song ideas into themselves and make it cohesive. And that was, a lot of the work was already done for me when I sat down to finally put this album together. And these ideas, for example, I didn't make the conscious decision to start to have it all on 8 string guitars. It just happened because I listened to Liturgia by Batushka and realized that was on 8 strings, and I'm like, oh cool, I have an 8 string, I'll start recording some stuff like this. And it's just kind of snowballed from there. It was actually quite easy to do, honestly. That's not a humble brag or anything. It just kind of came together.
So, you've had these tracks you've held on to from various bands and various times. How did you decide that now was the time to kind of compile it all?
Well, I've been trying to compile it all for about 5 years, but my ADHD and energy levels were just never enough to kind of give me the focus I needed to do this. And my life situation has actually improved quite a lot in the last couple of years, and I felt like I finally had the ability to put this out. And it's always been a dream of mine to release something to the wider world, something that's not just pressed on CDRs and handed out at shows or whatnot.
Mhm. When you saw the listing on Metal, you're now on Metal Archive. What was that reaction when you saw, oh, it's official. We are on the place.
That
That
was
was,
exactly, yeah, that was exactly the reaction. It was sort of like, oh my God, I guess I'm legit now.
Yeah.
What? Like,
It's not real if it's not on Metal Archives.
yeah, tell that to Meshuggah. No, yeah, I was blown away. I've been pretty blown away by everything in this process since releasing the album, and the first singles and the response we've gotten. I never expected to sell out of tapes and get the CD run printed, and spoiler, potentially a vinyl run next year.
Hmm.
So this is way, way more than I could have ever asked for, and I am so grateful for it all.
Yeah, I echo that as well. Yeah, it's sort of incredible the fact that sort of we've come into this and everything that we did with it was sort of arranged kind of last minute as well, considering that the album's been a work in progress for so many years.
Yeah.
It all came together really quickly, and sort of we didn't end up getting the masters of the tracks back until like 2 days before the thing went out, I think it was. So yeah, we I think Amanda will agree with me. We wanted to get this out because we knew we were onto something good and we wanted people to hear it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
What were you surprised to see it come out and have people on the internet, legitimately enjoying this and wanting to talk about it.
Definitely. I mean, that's always been something I've wanted for my own music, but um, I've never really felt like I was a good enough musician, uh, either from a technical or a, songwriting standpoint to be able to hack it with, other people who got their music out there. But thankfully, I was wrong about that. And, having this out there and be so well received just gives me a lot more confidence when I'm working on the second album.
Mhm. Now, I was looking at the promo I got for this and some of the FFOs, the for fans of listed on there. And you mentioned Sinmara, a band that I love, one that I wish was bigger, had a wider audience. When
Same.
I saw recently, can you sell Sinmara to my audience? Tell my listeners why they need to go listen to Sinmara right now.
They are ethereal, melodic, uh, just boundary pushing, incredible black metal. I mean,
I agree.
if you just go listen to the track Crimson Stars, and there's this little melodic line that comes in about halfway through that's just really genuinely gorgeous. And they have stuff like that through their entire discography, and I've been hooked since day one.
Yeah, I they're an Icelandic band and there is something, very unique about the Icelandic black metal sound. And they have that to an extent, but it's not, color by numbers Icelandic black metal either. There is something very, yes, it has those characteristics, but also it is its own entity. It is kind of, it's at times darker and more cavernous in some of those bands from that area. At the same time, it's also very melodic and gorgeous as you alluded to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have, despite the fact that I think one of the guitarists in Sinmara is in like half of the other Icelandic black metal bands. Um, the way he plays in this band and the way they all write together is, it reminds me of kind of a, like you said, more cavernous version of um, oh, what's the black metal band that's like space themed that also does the dungeon synth stuff on the side?
Oh,
Yeah,
I,
but it
I
feels
think I
like
might know what
that.
you're talking about. Oh, yeah, okay.
And it's just, it's so unique the way they blend these elements and end up sounding like something greater than the rest. I'm not saying they're better than all the other bands in the scene, but I think they're the most unique sounding in that scene.
Are you referring to Midnight Odyssey by any chance?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah,
Exactly. They sound like a more cavernous version of Midnight Odyssey.
sure.
And yeah, I just, that was a huge influence, not necessarily on the guitar playing level, because I'm not as angular and uh, you know, kind of the atonal riffs they have. I don't really incorporate those as much. But the way they layer their guitars and the way they write their songs is just huge for me. And as soon as I heard it, I'm like, oh, I have to figure these out, and I have to understand how this works because it sounds so cool.
When I saw them at MDF earlier this year, um, the vocalist was sitting down the entire performance. I don't usually see that, and had this hood. Never could tell what the face looked like, and it was just like became this enigma. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, he did that when I saw them as well. Just they had lots of smoke machines too, and
Hmm.
some swords and whatnot, and it really felt more than just your typical get on the stage and play these songs live performance.
Now, for the most part, you this band, Ashenheart, seems to be drawing a lot of inspiration from the earlier second wave classics, your Dark Thrones, your Emperors. And in your two's own word, what about that era of black metal do you think is so exciting and interesting? Why are we, as black metal listeners, always going back to it or so compelled by those early kind of Norwegian releases?
Alex,
I
what do
think,
you think? Yeah.
yeah, I think for me it was just it was something completely like fresh and new at the time. Like
Mhm.
um metal's constantly reinventing itself. And I think the sort of because of the age I'm at, that was probably the last big reinvention that happened within my lifetime, sort of when I was, the whole so I'm 34 and the whole second wave of black metal was early 90s, and that was sort of um what am I trying to say here? So I knew that that was happening while I was alive, basically. Like so the whole like thinking back about Metallica, Iron Maiden, that kind of stuff. It's like thinking about it is cool, but it's like all of that was happening and I wasn't born yet. But all the second wave black metal stuff, I'm like, well, these guys were doing this while I was alive, and there's that whole sort of yeah, connection there with it, I think. And I'm not very good at putting it into words, but I just find that whole part of it really cool.
Yeah.
So for me, that second wave feels like a bunch of young, almost kids, basically.
I mean, literally kids, pretty much.
Yeah, hitting on something that just sounded so fresh and so unique compared to what had come before, and and uniquely Norwegian as well, that it just has a sound and a quality to it that's not really, not entirely found in any other wave or era of the genre, because it was new, and they were basically making it up as they went along instead of being influenced by that stuff.
Yeah, I've seen takes on the internet for, yeah, I'll just say for people who don't understand black metal really, who talk about the second wave as being rather, rudimentary and amateurish compared to kind of where black metal would go. And and that is absolutely true to an extent. Um, Transylvanian Hunger, De Mysteries Down Satanis, those are simple records. They're not complex. It's not very technical. It's not the best put together produced stuff ever recorded, but that versus say something coming out this year that's very avant-garde or experimental, there's still, and I love that stuff, but there's such a, you can feel the actual like true angst and the sense of discovery of those bands. It's like finding something and finding a way to channel this newfound nihilism and just kind of
Yeah.
put it into a record. And that's a feeling you can't get from like a modern black metal record. That feeling is kind of past. You can't recreate that.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was it was so raw. I think that was the
Yeah,
whole thing about it. Yeah.
and it created the building blocks, right? Like you can't have a great record until the foundation is set, right? Enslaved, the early enslaved records like those are, standard Norwegian black metal with a bit of more of a Viking edge. But because they had that foundation, then they built into kind of something more progressive later on.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
the second wave set the tone in a way that's like its most pure then.
Something that I think a lot of people also don't hit on or don't realize is that that second wave stuff, especially Dark Throne, had a huge punk influence.
Yeah.
And there's a section on The Last Lord of Fire that my song that basically has a breakdown riff in it. And that was heavily inspired by, Dark Throne and the way they incorporated those, even some Mayhem, really. Those first, few albums were very, DIY punk influenced. And I think people who look at it from the lens of what black metal is now are missing the point, and they're not seeing the forest for the trees.
There's conventional music journalism, which I am not a part of. I talk about underground metal, but if you go to like the more kind of mainstream sources, like your pitchforks, or like stuff like that, they'll always refer to 1976 as year zero, as the year that punk records really started hitting. So it's like when I think the Ramones put out their first record, Sex Pistols. A lot of like stuff that we kind of conceptualize as the beginning of punks happened in 1976. And they call it year zero because it saw rock and roll kind of losing its footing and kind of getting away from the point and becoming kind of bloated. And I don't agree with it completely. That sense, I think it's like I think that was critics not understanding prog rock, but I understand what they're trying to get at.
Yeah.
But I think black metal, early 90s is metal's year zero, stripping it down and rebuilding it. Which is what black metal did.
Yeah, that is an extremely good observation, because the metal, or parts of metal at least in the 80s, were going through the same kind of thing that prog rock did in the mid 70s, where it was getting more grandiose and technical and what have you. And these Norwegian kids created this scene that resembled the 70s punk scenes in the way it deconstructed and stripped down everything about metal to something new. And I think that's a big draw for a lot of people still, is going back and hearing that in progress.
I think too, like when you look at kind of how metal evolved earlier than black metal, it you started with Sabbath, and it got faster and more complex with stuff like Priest and Maiden, and then the new album took it to be more of this kind of theatrical sort of, I don't know, took it really into these anthems. And then thrash built onto that by adding more of an aggressive edge to that, but Metallica still had a lot of Metallica Megadeth flavor. Also had that lot of classic heavy metal, grandeur to them. And then death metal decided to bump up the extremity and the brutality of thrash. But I think black metal saw that evolution and was like, let's go back and focus on that darkness and that evilness that Black Sabbath tried to tap into, that I think metal never embraced fully until black metal.
Yeah.
Black metal saw that aspect and decided, wait, there was something there. Let's grab onto that.
100%, yeah. And I think one of the things that is really cool that I've had feedback about with Faded Gold particularly is like it sounds evil. Like you can hear the sort of the dirt and that that sort of really coming through in that album. And yeah, I'm really pleased that we managed to capture that and sort of get that vibe right.
Yeah, people picking up on that, people picking up on the Dark Throne influence, people picking up on the Ulver influence in the vocals. it's really nice to hear uh, people understanding what you're trying to do.
Mhm. Now, Amanda, you already mentioned this earlier, but I did want to ask, you do use an 8-string guitar on this record, and you explained kind of the why already with the, the Batushka influence. But I'm curious, for those who may not understand, of what an 8-string guitar is,
Yeah.
how did that play into the writing and performing of this record? What did it bring specifically?
So a lot of it is a lot of my riffs that carry the songs are lower in
Hmm.
register. Like I tune a half step down on 8, so I have a low F and a low B flat.
Okay.
And it really allowed me to inject some punch and low end into that typical black metal formula that I think some bands some bands neglect that kind of frequency range. And I think that the ability to play those punchier riffs, it adds more variety to the songs as a whole.
Hmm. Yeah.
And there's going to be 6-string material as well on the new album, but primarily it's all going to be because I like the way that I like what the 8-string and the extended range stuff brings to the table in genres you wouldn't normally see it in.
Yeah, and black metal doesn't typically emphasize those lower registers like death metal does. So it's cool to see you kind of try to bring that in.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think we've kind of been joking on Twitter recently, actually, that what we're doing is sort of death and black metal as opposed to the usual black and death metal. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because it's black metal, but it has the death metal elements to it
Hmm.
that you know you see someone with an 8-string and they're like, oh, they're in a deathcore or a tech death band. And I think that what other band? I know Shamash have used 7 strings for ages, and I think that brings that same sort of darker tone to their music.
Hmm.
And it just seems like something a lot of bands you would think would want to pursue that kind of sound, but they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, you're used to band, focusing on the more, at least in black metal, the more trebly tonality, which to be fair, I love. I think it's, something that very much distinguishes black metal, the focus on these kind of screechy, high, unpleasant, dissonant sounds that you get from like the higher register of the guitar. But there's another, there are other notes you could play with that also sound dark and twisted.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
perfect example of this, in my opinion, is the last 2 Panopticon albums.
Okay.
Over the pandemic, Austin Lunn bought an 8-string and he wrote And Again Into the Light, which is one of my favorite albums of all time and basically saved my life over the pandemic, on an 8-string, and continued that with the newest one. And I really like the way he uses that to um, explore the whole register of the guitar instead of just going ham on the low strings all the time.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we would be wasting this interview if we didn't talk about Elden Ring, because that is like the main lyrical inspiration for this band, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I I admittedly haven't played it yet. I'm kind of a patient gamer. I don't typically play games the first year. I wait for them to go on sale. Or I don't know. I have a backlog, but I do plan on playing it soon. From but explain to me, at least in your opinion, why has this and we'll say why has Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate 3 become these universal phenomena in gaming the past couple years.
Well, I can
I'm
definitely. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
I was actually going to say this is going to have to completely be Amanda because I'll be honest with you, Maddie, I haven't played it either. So
Oh,
when we were recording it, Amanda sent me all these pages and pages of lore over to try and read through. And to be fair, I did start on it, but yeah, I got so engrossed in the sort of the recording of the vocals for the album that just sort of got put to the wayside a little bit. So yeah,
amazing.
Amanda's definitely the Elden Ring expert of the two of us here.
Okay.
So I have like somewhere around 1,000 hours total in Elden Ring. Um, I've always been a Souls games fan, but
Mm,
I think the reason Elden Ring was so huge for a lot of people, including me, was if you ever ran up against a wall, you could just go do something else and get stronger, get more experience, both literally and figuratively,
yeah.
and come back to it later. And it's the most accessible game From has made because of that. Um, Not the DLC. The DLC is like being dragged over hot coals while eating your favorite ice cream. Um, but I was honestly surprised to see it blow up like that. It's kind of the same with Baldur's Gate, though it was a D&D RPG, so that was a little less because Elden Ring is weird. Um, Elden Ring's lore is fucked,
Yeah.
honestly. Um, but the way it the way it became such this huge phenomenon, I think a lot of people were just looking for something to pour a lot of hours into, around the time it came out. I certainly was. Uh,
2022, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And something about the world, the lore, and the way it felt familiar, but unfamiliar at the same time for anyone who played a Souls game before. It it, it really felt like they'd perfected this formula in a way that would could appeal to the maximum amount of people. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Some people do, but I'm not one of them. I think that making it more accessible, making it more approachable, and still being esoteric and weird and hard is a very, very difficult tightrope to walk.
Yeah, and from what I understand is they took some of the mechanics from, Dark Souls and Demon Souls, but actually packaged it in a way that is more accessible to a wider audience, which doesn't mean that they were watering down those games. Those games are still there, and they still want they still want those games to be the ass kicking that they are, but they wanted a different approach with this game. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I haven't played it, but that's from my understanding, at least what I've kind of had explained to me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The thing with the Souls games is each one hates the player a little less. Demon Souls had all these weird mechanics like world tendency and stuff you that was never really fully explained to you and you had to figure out yourself. And Dark Souls, had Dark Souls was obviously a big step up in accessibility and approachability from that, but it was still, you know, just very niche. And I think, Miyazaki has admitted he's bad at his own games. And I think that this is kind of a balance he's been trying to strike for the last decade or so or more.
Amanda, you are the first person in the history of video games to use accessible and Dark Souls in the same sentence.
Well, compared to Demon Souls, pretty much any game they've made is accessible, except maybe some of the early Armored Cores.
Yeah.
But yeah, Demon Souls had no mercy for you. If you screwed up, it was over.
And people know this about Dark Souls going in, yet so many people are convinced to give it their first try. How can a game have such an infamous reputation and also this over? Like, how did that game do that?
When I first beat the first boss that was giving me a headache and I was just bashing my head against a wall in Demon Souls, it was honestly one of the best feelings of elation in my entire life.
Hmm,
The lows are there and they can be low, but oh my God, the highs. It's just it's a dopamine hit like almost nothing else.
sure.
And I think that combined with the world and the lore is a big reason people, well, and peer pressure. That's also a big reason people get into these games. But I would recommend Elden Ring to almost anyone. If you can, if you can play a modern action game, you can play Elden Ring. There's a VTuber I was watching who is notoriously bad at action games, and now she beat the first boss of the DLC of Elden Ring in 45 minutes.
When you say a modern action game, like what kind of games are you referring to?
Um, I don't know, Horizon,
Okay.
stuff like that. Just, mainstream God of War, uh, stuff. If you can play that and you can get through it, you can get through Elden Ring. It's just a matter of slowing down and learning from your mistakes.
Hmm.
That's all the game wants of you is to learn from your mistakes and vary up your strategy. I see people trying to play the entire game with one weapon. I saw a streamer go up against that same boss the VTuber beat in 45 minutes for like 6 hours, and he just refused to try a different weapon in his arsenal.
Hmm.
And the game punishes you for being stubborn and uncreative like that. It wants you to succeed. It wants you to beat these bosses and conquer these challenges, and it gives you all the tools you need to do that. You just have to have the initiative to use them.
See, as someone who plays a lot of MMO, who plays, an MMO, who plays a lot of RuneScape, I'm used to having to analyze different bosses and see like what are their weaknesses and kind of look at statistics and build, my approach that way based on, I would never think to approach one boss the same way as another boss. Like, so the idea of like using one weapon the entire game seems foreign to me, but maybe that is just how people have approached games.
Yeah, you're already better prepared to play Elden Ring than like 90% of the people who've approached it. If you go in with that mentality, because that's exactly what they want you to do. They
Yeah.
want you to learn the boss, learn the patterns, and approach it with the tools you're given. And if you do that, you can win.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. It's just you just have to be able to analyze and learn. That's the biggest skill in these games. Not dodging, not blocking, not character. Oh, well, character building is still pretty important, but or else you'll end up with Elon Musk's build.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just a matter of paying attention, really. And the world wants that out of you as well. Read the item descriptions for lore, figure out the story, figure out where you need to go next. Although Elden Ring is very much more forward in its story and handholding, which I think is a good thing. There's some there are a couple cut scenes and moments in Elden Ring's story that just generally left me going, wow. And I can't say that about another Souls game.
I am another thing that like surprised me about this recent. I know when I keep bringing up Baldur's Gate because it's a completely different game, but I'm bringing it up with Elden Ring as like an example of two games that I didn't realize the mainstream wanted. When I see it selling so much and being one of the top played games, I thought that space was like reserved for like Call of Duties, like
Mhm.
like games like that. I didn't people know people wanted the depth that those games offer.
Well,
think
I think a big part of it is how many people are thirsty for hot young vampire twinks in the case of Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
But I feel much the same because, that's still at its core a CRPG, which many people thought was a dead genre.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sort of just from a sort of a more mainstream gamer perspective as well, that even the people that would buy your Call of Duties, etc., each time are, from my experience, starting to get a little bit fed up of the whole sort of the same game over and over again, just with a slightly different skin on it, and people want a little bit more depth and they want something that they can sink their teeth into a little bit more. Yeah, I genuinely think that there's a bit of a hunger for that in
You
the
can only eat candy for so many meals before you want
exactly
something else.
exactly.
When I was in middle school, I played the shit out of Call of Duty 4, the first Modern Warfare, but it was
Yeah.
new at the time and it was something that I had not experienced before. Um, and then quickly, even as a young kid, I was like, wait, you're gonna give me this game again every year and it's getting progressively less exciting. Why are you doing this? And I left that train at like 15.
Yeah, same.
But
Halo at least had the sense of mind to come out every few years.
oh, I think it's a disrespect to Halo to even put them in the same category as Call of
Yeah, it
Duty.
is, honestly.
Because
Halo was
Halo was
amazing.
a mass appeal game because it was an FPS, but it had so much more depth to its lore. It wasn't just like CIA propaganda every year, which is like a generic kind of,
Yeah,
oh,
people wanted
bad
to
guy, go
see.
kill bad guy story.
I remember when 3 came out, everyone at school was talking about Halo 3. Like that
Hmm.
was the event of the summer. It felt like it was everywhere. And I can't say that about any other Call of Duty game, for example, since 4.
Yeah.
But I'll echo what Alex said. It feels like since the pandemic, there's been some sort of like shift in what people want from their art, at least among a certain portion of the population, where they're like, oh, hey, buying the same FIFA game or Call of Duty game every year and having it just be a roster update is getting really old. It doesn't have anything left to say.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh, hey, all my friends, everyone on Steam is playing this game called Baldur's Gate 3. Let's check out what it is. And I think the character dynamics in Baldur's Gate 3 are what drew people to it. It's a lot of the same way that people got so invested in Mass Effect,
Hmm.
where you have these well-written, likable characters, um, and the way they riff off each other you and the way you can influence their story is a huge part of. I have people who hate turn-based combat, and they played like 120 hours of Baldur's Gate 3 because of these characters and the story.
I was so invested in all of these characters and learning the tragedies, of Asterion or just like we'll keep it spoiler free, but like what you find out about Shadowheart's past is I got my Shadowheart right here. What you find about Shadowheart's past is so dark and tragic, and I don't games don't usually go that hard in terms of like developing a backstory for all of its characters.
Yeah, like
Um,
that's every character. Every character is that well written, that deep. And I can see how people would just want to lose themselves in that.
mhm, 100%. Well, I love talking games with bands, so we don't have to talk just Elden Ring. I want to know what are you two playing right now?
I am currently replaying Dragon Age Inquisition in preparation for the new one coming out shortly. Because yeah, I love me a bit of Dragon Age.
Hell
So
yeah.
really, really excited for that new game. And I have pretty much always got a Witcher playthrough on the go, a Skyrim playthrough on the go, and when I feel like chilling out a bit, I still to this day love a new Pokemon game. I know that that is completely going back on what I said about not enjoying a reskinned game every year, but you know what? Slap a Pokemon logo on it and I will buy it. I'm fully willing to admit that.
So for me, I've gotten sucked back into Mech Warrior Online
Okay.
again. Um, and I've been playing this new game called Fields of Mystria, which is like a Stardew Valley farming sim kind of thing.
Well,
But it
that's
does a
actually
lot of new stuff with the genre that I really like, even though it's in early access. And apart from that, I have been revisiting Doom because the new enhanced editions just came out. And I'm pretty much always trying to get better at Street Fighter 6 too.
no shit. I literally just installed Doom 2016 on my PC. I haven't I that game I've played before, but it's one of the next one I'm gonna play through. So that's
Oh
just coincidence. Yeah.
man. Oh man.
Yeah.
You are in for a ride.
Um, I'm someone who can only play, well, I should, so I only play one game at a time. I like to just completely beat a game and then move to the next one. I don't like trying to juggle different games, except for I'm always playing through old school RuneScape. I'm continuing to, so here's my gaming schedule every day. I listen to music while I play RuneScape and work on show stuff until nighttime. Then I play another game actively. I do that is my schedule every single day. So there's always a game I'm like my nighttime gaming and my RuneScape are always I'm always doing a different game in RuneScape. Always. But I recently got a hold of a secondhand Switch. I've never owned a Switch. I have a Switch now. Um, so I am playing Breath of the Wild for the first time, and I am adoring it. I'm sad I've waited these many years.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I recently just got my hands on a secondhand copy of that, and I'm about to start playing that for the first time myself.
God, I
So,
wish I could do that.
yeah.
um, yeah, no, it's pretty magical. It takes like the RPG format and kind of it kind of simplifies it, but in a way that's completely charming and that I'm all sold in on. Um,
I I
I
s- Go
go
ahead.
for it.
I was gonna say I still prefer the old school 3D Zelda formula, but what they accomplished in Breath of the Wild, like, oh man, that was another example of a game that just absolutely blew up in the public consciousness.
Yeah.
And Zelda had already been popular, but the way Breath of the Wild reworked the formula and made it so you can tackle it at your own pace and just go around and explore and whatnot, just really, I think, appealed to people who were looking for a killer app on the Switch. And the Switch has since filled out its library with just so much great stuff.
I have to say, I come from a kind of I'm very into computers, and I'm kind of a hardware snob in that way. That's why I'm almost exclusively a PC gamer. Because I love
Same.
my FPS number go up. I love my resolution native go up. I love all the numbers that I can make with my PC that a console can't make. If anyone tells me that a console can even touch the power of a PC, they are wrong. You might like the simplicity of a console, that's great, but it doesn't touch any. The PC is a way more powerful machine in every way. So to go from playing games at like, playing Red Dead Redemption 2 at on ultra settings at like 120 FPS to try to play Breath of the Wild and just be okay at 720p and 30 FPS, it's taking a lot out of me. And I'm just gonna be like, Maddie, calm down. It's not that big of a deal. but it is kind of a shock to me to see that normal people are okay with this.
Yeah. I mean, I, I have a 4090 and a 7395X CPU, so I'm all about that as well. Revisiting a lot of the Switch library can be pretty jarring
Yeah,
after that, and they really need to knock it out of the park with whatever they've got up coming up to succeed it as far as hardware specs go, because the Switch is basically using 5 or 6 year, 8-year-old phone hardware at this point. And I think that what carries it, especially now, and what's carried it the whole time, is the strength of its library and what these developers manage to accomplish despite the technical limitations. If you really want to torture yourself, you can go play one of my favorite games of all time on the Switch, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which runs like complete ass. And they went so far beyond what the Switch could handle that you can tell it's struggling.
yeah.
And yeah, going from 4K 120 frames per second, like Cyberpunk or whatever, to the Switch, I think Breath of the Wild comes out a little better in that equation than a lot of the library because of the way they did the graphics. It's very low poly, sort of stylized, cell shaded kind of thing.
Yeah, but and it looks beautiful, but sometimes I'll like, start climbing a hill and see the grass and just how blurry and pixelated it is. Like I'm
Yep.
like, this could be so striking on a PC. And the only
It
reason I
would.
wanted a Switch was because of the exclusivity of their title, because Nintendo is the Apple of video games. And I finally gave in. It's like I need to play these games. I wish if I could play them on Steam, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really it really goes to show, you know, the problem with consoles is they have to stay affordable
Yeah.
for the average person. The average person can't do what I did and like drop like $3,000 on a gaming and studio PC. Um,
Mine is not quite that spec'd out, but I spent about 2 grand. I'm running a 7800 X3D and a 7800 XT graphics card, so still
okay,
pretty high
yeah,
spec. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, but I also don't think people understand the gap between what a PC can do and what consoles can do. And you can't write and compose music on your well, maybe you can. I don't quote me on that. You can't the PC does so much more than just gaming.
yeah.
Um and I think that people are put off by the price and by, oh, I don't know how to build a PC. I don't know how to do all this stuff. It's so complicated.
There are services that do that for you.
Yeah. And even if they don't, I taught myself how to put the PC together. It's really not as complicated, I think, as people make it out to be in their heads.
Before I built my baby here, um, I was I was running BeaverMosh off a laptop. I was doing everything off that, and the efficiency after I built this, of doing the show, I'm doing able to do so much more, with a powerful PC. Plus, play some play games at just ooh, it just like makes me so giddy inside seeing what this computer can handle.
Yeah, I was using a laptop for recording for a lot of the past 10 years, and
Uh,
finally getting a PC that could handle, I hope I'm not sounding like Yari Mayinpa here, but could handle all the VSTs and effects and stuff I wanted to load up in my DAW.
mhm.
Was really revelatory in being able to finally finish this album.
This episode is going to appeal to a very small, like Venn diagram of people who are like tech nerds and metal nerds, which is like not unheard of to be into both, but like The people that really like this episode are the people that like both of those things.
Definitely.
The other day I actually referred to us as Dork Throne because there's two of us. We're playing black metal and we like a load of nerdy stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
uh, for you watching at home, I don't think you're a pleb or anything if you are playing a PS5.
Oh, definitely no.
I get it. Have fun. Consider building a PC at some point because you will see a huge difference. But enjoy your games. I'm so happy that you have that.
And I've got
Um,
an Xbox, which is why I've largely been keeping out of this.
like a Series X.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, that has some good games on it. I mean, um, and it's it's decently powerful too.
yeah.
It's pretty good. It is, yeah, it is pretty good. It was a noticeable step up from the previous Xbox that I had. So yeah, it's cool.
My dad has one and he really enjoys it.
Hmm.
But then he only plays like Tom Clancy's The Division 2 and stuff like that. But
I
There was
think
he has a
I,
ton of hours in that.
I think I'm a much more casual gamer than either of you two, to be fair. I just like to be able to like pick up a controller, sit on the sofa and play an hour of whatever just to wind down a little bit. But yeah,
And that's the
I
appeal of
yeah,
consoles is
yeah,
you can just do
exactly.
that.
I think I'm interested in playing games on PC because it's an extension of my interest in computers. I'm trying to get into doing it, working on computers as a living. So like PC gaming just kind of lets me like see the fruits of my labor and see like, oh, I understand what these pieces are doing, and I get to see it translated on screen on with the games.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I did IT and tech support for like 5 years, so I'm really into that, kind of thing too.
yeah, I think like up to the 360, the games on PC and console were different. So like it made sense to have both. Now there are a few games that you might have to wait for if you're a PC gamer that like have like a limited exclusivity on um PlayStation. But right now the only games that I think are not on PC are like Bloodborne and the original Red Dead Redemption. Everything else you can pretty much get, except if it's a Nintendo title.
Sony,
Um,
please port Demon Souls remake to PC.
but mentioning that, apparently, the news of the PC port for the original Red Dead Redemption leaked on a PS4 store somehow. But that's supposed to happen.
Oh,
So kind of cool.
finally.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to replay that. That was such a big game for me in my late teens, in early 20s that it was like, oh, it's like Grand Theft Auto, but cowboys. And then I actually like the writing in the Red Dead Redemption series more than Grand Theft Auto personally.
Well, Grand Theft Auto, and Red Dead Redemption, it's the same engine, there are a lot of similarities, but you can tell the tone is very different. Red Dead
Yep.
Redemption takes a very serious, more dramatic tone. And Grand Theft Auto, not a knock on Grand Theft Auto. They're just completely different games.
Yeah.
It's more animated in a good way.
Yeah. Red Dead Redemption 2 is still like that. Those characters and that story have stuck with me. And I still think about that game a lot. I need to replay it. It's what a masterpiece.
Mhm.
A lot of people knocked it, but I really like how slow it can be and, contemplative and just really kind of, yeah, I
Well, see,
like that
I
quality.
enjoy like JRPGs and stuff like that. So I like the slow pace. Where I'm not saying I dislike them. I do like, but I'm like less likely to pick up like a platformer or an FPS because I'm
Hmm.
not into like the button mashing as much as some people.
I think, would like, if you're into JRPGs, should check out Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition on the Switch.
So that's what like the next game I'm probably gonna. I was looking at that 'cause, like, oh but yeah, there's all these RPGs I have like Fire Emblem too that I had no access to. So I do want to play those.
Yeah, Xenoblade, the first Xenoblade, even though it was locked to the Wii and didn't even come out in America for years, that's still one of the greatest things I've ever played.
Hmm.
And the definitive edition actually looks good and runs pretty well on the Switch. it's not as demanding a game as the sequels.
Well, bring it back in tying games and metal. Um, you are a band that, started, writing lyrics about Elden Ring. And you have mentioned putting out a follow-up record at some point. I guess this is more a question for Amanda then, since you were the one who was like the lore nerd according to Alex. Um, do you plan on sticking to Elden Ring, or do you plan on maybe exploring a different game to kind of tell stories about in the next record?
Well, Alex has got some lyrics we're going to use for record two.
Hell yeah.
Um, Violet from oh God, my brain is Violet from what I'm sorry, can you remind me of her band again?
Uh, I know, I know.
No, no, it's
Oh,
God. Uh she is in Wolven Daughter, that's it.
oh, Woven Daughter.
She's
Yes,
gonna
yeah.
write some lyrics for us in the next album. And I'm a big Warhammer 40,000 fan, a big Warhammer Fantasy fan, and I read a ton. And there's other stuff I plan to return to Elden Ring eventually, but there's other stuff I want to explore, other games, other books, just other topics for album two. And I've already got a few songs written with lyrics that explore some other stuff. I won't spoil anything, but a couple books I read recently. One is called Lessons in Bird Watching by Honey Watson, which you should check out if you love extremely weird and fucked up sci-fi. And yeah, I'm not abandoning Elden Ring, but I did an entire album about Elden Ring. I kind of want to do some other stuff, let Alex flex his lyrical abilities, bring in some other people to help, just be more collaborative, basically.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and my lyrics are sort of more based on nature, environment, that kind of stuff. I
Sure.
live in the middle of the woods, so I've got a lot
Same.
of that. Yeah, I got a lot of that going on around me, and it's one of the main things that inspires me to write and make music. So definitely a little bit more of that to come on the next album, I think.
Now, do you both live in the same vicinity, or are you kind of mainly a file sharing band?
Oh, I'm in Michigan in the USA and he's in the UK.
Okay.
I'm in Hampshire in the UK. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very, very far apart.
Yep.
Yes.
I I knew you had, a UK accent, Alex, but I didn't know if you still lived there. I just like, who knows? So like, yeah, I thought I'd ask.
No, that's fair enough. There's been a lot of confusion about that on online since we released the album, actually, and a lot of people think that we got together to record it, and actually, no, the whole thing was done remotely via Dropbox sharing. Basically, our process was Amanda sent me the songs pretty much finished
Oh,
with the lyrics. I sort of found the vocal melody in them and just recorded my vocals over the top, sent them back to Amanda, and we went from there.
Yeah, and everything he recorded was like I didn't really have to ask him for any like vocal melody or performance changes. That was all perfect. And
oh yeah.
I love that you can record an album like this that sounds good and not have to all be in the same room together.
Yeah, absolutely. It,
Like
it
even
worked really well for us. We worked really well like that, I think.
yeah, even when I was in, when I started my first band and even the second one to a degree, this kind of completely online file sharing band thing was not really as viable as finding people in your local area and getting a band together, but it definitely is now. And I absolutely love that because it gives more people an opportunity to be creative that might not otherwise be able to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember hearing about file share projects, you know, 10 or so years ago, but I don't think any of them really really took off. They existed, but none of them, none you could tell that they weren't as like well done as like some of the other records. Now that like that distinction is not there anymore. It just
Yeah.
Yeah.
isn't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, social media and file sharing sites like Dropbox and whatnot. They're just they're so easy to use compared to what they were 10 years ago. It really is night and day. And I'm really glad because I don't think I would have gotten this album done otherwise because there is zero metal scene where I live. Just
Mm.
nothing.
Same. Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been trying my damned hardest to get some kind of musical project together for the best part of like 10, 12 years. And the furthest we've ever got with anything was like rehearsal stages, realized that none of us were really compatible. We didn't want the same things out of it, and it just ended up going nowhere because of that. And when you've got such a small pool of people to draw from, you're sort of your local area you go through all the musicians really quickly. So to be able to have this and to be able to, like Amanda and I did, meet somebody online who I think shares a similar philosophy when it comes to making music and, have similar crossover tastes and things like that with our influencers. I think that can only be considered a really, really great thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the pool goes from like maybe 10 people to being unlimited. Both my previous bands uh, broke up because the members ended up having to move away for work or family or whatnot. And yeah, it's nice to not have to worry about that.
Yeah, and obviously it does come with some complications. Like, for example, we've not been able to play live to promote the album. And it's not really something that's on the cards for us either. So it's meant we've had to be kind of creative with the promo. I've done a lot of stuff on Twitter, Facebook, etc. And I was at a Bloodstock Festival this week just gone. So I did a lot of like handing out flyers, handing out free codes for people to listen to the album, putting stickers in porta toilets and things like that. And I mean, it's working. Our numbers are steadily growing on the streaming services. We're hitting our where we need to hit with selling the CDs to get them made and stuff like that. So it's a slow approach, but it is getting us there.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, our streaming numbers went from like 100 people to like 1,700 people in a week, which
Hmm.
is just insane to me.
Yeah, that's a huge jump.
Yeah, we were. I think we've sort of plateaued at about the 1800 mark now, but for that first couple of weeks to just see that like sometimes doubling overnight was kind of incredible. It was like, who are all these people? I want to find them all and thank them individually. But yeah, it was that was really cool.
Yeah. Well, Amanda, Alex, those were all the questions I had prepared for you. But before I let you go, I want to give the last words to you to share band camps, all the socials, all the things, all the plugs. Go for it.
You're the promotion guy, Alex. Go ahead.
Oh God, you put me on the spot now. Well, honestly, I just firstly want to say thank you to all the people that have bought the record so far. Um, obviously we wouldn't be here speaking to Maddie if it weren't for you people. And just to let you know that there's going to be a lot more to come from Amanda and I think. We've hit upon a really good formula with how we work together. I think we're in the process of becoming good friends through it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and yeah, just sort of watch this space for further stuff.
if you want to find our merch or we're just Ashenheart on Bandcamp, but we have logo shirts and whatnot. You can find me on Twitter under Ashenheart Metal, all one word. My pinned post is all our stuff and the Spotify links. And if you want to follow me and can handle the dumb stuff I retweet and post about, feel free.
And
Uh,
we're also on Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. I run that side of it, and Amanda runs the Twitter feed and the Bandcamp. So yeah, we've got all bases covered there.
Hell yeah.
But
Well,
thank you for having us on. We're both big fans. We both really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
yeah.
you, Maddie. It's been great. Really, really great interview experience. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Well, Alex, Amanda, thank you so much for hopping on. Thank you, everyone watching at home. As always, thank you to my patrons. You are the best. You help pay the bills. My name's Maddie. I'm I'm out of here now. I'm hitting the button. Bye.